My daughter glared at her own son, shoved a gift bag into his hands, and spat, "You owe me." What he found inside made the whole room go silent. Hey there, thanks for stopping by. Before we jump into today's story, take a deep breath, get comfortable, maybe grab a cup of coffee, because this one is not easy. It's about a mother who raised the child her daughter walked away from, and what happened when the past showed up knocking again. Have you ever had to carry someone else's burden? Or tried to protect the people you love from a pain they didn't deserve? If that hits close to home, you're not alone. Stick around to the end and see how this family finds a way through it all. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Keeps me going and helps me bring more heartfelt tales your way. Let's get into it.
It wasn't the kind of birthday surprise you expect from your daughter on a crisp October morning. I was sipping my second cup of coffee, watching George puzzle over the crossword as usual, when Lana walked in holding a paper bag. She dropped it on the table like it was a bag of groceries, but the shaking in her fingers told me something else. Inside, there wasn't a gift. There was a positive pregnancy test and a handwritten note that read simply, "Don't freak out, I'm keeping it, but I'm not raising it. Your turn." No mom, no sorry, no warmth. Just that cold declaration. I remember blinking at the stick, then at Lana, who had already lit a cigarette and was pacing like she was being judged. "I'm not ready for a baby, and I don't want to be a mom," she said, exhaling sharply. "But you love babies, and frankly, I don't trust myself not to mess this kid up." George didn't say a word. He just set down his crossword, folded his hands, and stared at the table. We were both stunned, but there was a silent, shared understanding that settled between us like dust. This child didn't ask for any of this. Whatever resentment or confusion we had toward Lana would have to wait. 9 months later, I cut the cord. Literally. Lana had gone into labor on a rainy Tuesday. She screamed at the nurses, cursed the doctor, and refused to look at the baby when he was placed in her arms. "Take him," she said, turning her head to the wall. She didn't even ask his name. We named him Caleb. From the very beginning, Caleb was sunlight in a life full of long shadows. He wasn't our child by blood, but in every way that mattered, he was ours. He had George's calm eyes and my stubborn streak. He cried when he saw animals hurt on TV. He once gave his favorite action figure to a kid on the playground who was crying. He didn't ask for it back. But every so often, I'd find him staring at his reflection like he was trying to figure out who he really was. Once, when he was 7, he asked me, "Did my mom not like babies?" I lied. "No, sweetie, she just had other things going on." Lana moved across the country when Caleb was 3. We barely spoke after that. Sometimes she'd send a postcard with some artsy skyline photo on it and a scribbled, "Hope you're well." Never a birthday card, never a call. By the time Caleb was 10, he'd stopped asking. Or so I thought. One night, while I was cleaning out his room, I found a box under his bed. Inside were a dozen letters addressed to Mom, written in uneven child handwriting. None of them had been sent. The first one said, "Hi, my name is Caleb. I like drawing dinosaurs." The last one simply read, "Why don't you want me?" I cried over that box for hours. I didn't have answers, just a storm of questions Lana had left behind like cigarette ash. George and I poured everything we had into Caleb's upbringing. Private school tuition? We worked overtime. Soccer camp? We borrowed against our retirement fund. College fund? We cut down vacations, birthdays, and holiday gifts for ourselves. Because we believed, no, we needed to believe, that love could erase absence, that showing up every day could heal the wounds left by someone who never showed up at all. But some scars settle under the skin, hidden even from those who love you most. When Caleb turned 18, he made a decision he didn't tell us about. He went looking for Lana. It wasn't until months later that I learned about the messages he'd sent, the email she never answered, the Facebook friend request she ignored, and then the call. He told me about it one night after dinner when George had gone to bed. He told me about it one night quietly. She answered on the third ring, he said, quietly, told me I had the wrong number, but I knew it was her. I'd know that voice anywhere. He didn't cry, but something behind his eyes dimmed that never quite came back. We had raised a kind, brilliant, soulful boy, but no matter how good a home you build, you can't replace the home someone refused to build for you. And I feared that one day, that absence would return, not as sorrow, but as something worse. Anger disguised as forgiveness. I didn't know then how right I would be. It was a Tuesday when she came back. I was in the garden trimming hydrangeas when I saw a car I didn't recognize pull into our driveway. A beat-up silver sedan, held together more by rust and prayers than bolts. The door opened and out stepped Lana, 23 years after she'd left, holding nothing but a cheap purse and that same old look, like the world owed her something and she was just here to collect. She didn't smile. She didn't even say, "Hi, Mom." She just looked at me like I was a receptionist at a hotel she had overbooked. "Is Caleb home?" she asked. My heart didn't skip, it clenched. She hadn't asked how I was, hadn't said a word about George, who'd had a minor stroke the year before. She was here for one thing, and one thing only. I told her he was at work. She nodded, like it was a minor inconvenience, and then followed me inside without asking. I made tea. She didn't drink it. She glanced around the living room like she was inspecting it, her gaze catching on the pictures. Caleb's graduation photo, his high school soccer championship, a framed drawing he made of George when he was 8. "Looks like you did okay with him," she said flatly. "Better than I would have." There was no remorse, no softness, just a casual observation, like she was commenting on weather. I set the cup down harder than I meant to. "Why are you here, Lana?" She shrugged. "Things aren't great right now. I thought maybe Caleb would want to reconnect, maybe help me out a little." There it was. No apology, no ownership, just a thin veil over what was clearly a request for money. Like we were supposed to be grateful she'd even darkened our doorstep. That night, I told Caleb. He didn't react how I thought he would. No shouting, no anger, just a long silence, followed by, "What did she say?" I told him everything. His jaw clenched, and he looked away like the air had turned sour. Then he surprised me. "Tell her I'll meet her. Just once." "Are you sure?" I asked. "You don't have to." "I need to," he said. "For me, not for her." We chose a public place, neutral ground, a small cafe downtown with good lighting and witnesses. Rachel came with him, his fiancée, and bless her, she said almost nothing the whole time, just held his hand beneath the table like an anchor. Lana arrived late. She looked thinner, but not in a worrying way, more like she'd spent years trying on other people's lives and never found one that fit. When she sat down, she launched right into it. "I'm not looking for a handout," she said, "but I'm in a tight spot. I just need a place to land. Maybe a little loan. I could get back on my feet." Caleb didn't speak. He just stared at her, his thumb slowly running along Rachel's knuckle like he was grounding himself. After a moment, he asked, "Why now?" Lana blinked, then smiled that tight, practice smile I'd seen 1,000 times when she was a teenager trying to get out of detention. "Because I've changed. I've grown up." "No," Caleb said softly. "You just ran out of people to ask." She flinched, just a little. The conversation didn't last long after that. When she realized he wasn't opening his wallet, she pivoted, hard. She brought up childbirth, said she could have taken the other option, but chose to have him. Like she deserved credit for not aborting him, even if she'd spent his whole life pretending he didn't exist. Rachel stood up first. "We're done here." Caleb followed her lead, But before he left, he looked at Lana one last time and said, "I'm not mad anymore. I'm just done trying to get something from someone who never wanted to give it." Then he walked away. But something told me that wouldn't be the end of it. With Lana, endings rarely came clean. And I was right, because just 2 weeks later, I'd find myself staring at a letter with Caleb's name scrawled across the envelope, and a return address I'd seen before, a women's shelter on the other side of town. And tucked inside wasn't just a letter. It was a copy of Caleb's birth certificate, freshly printed, with Lana's name circled in red, and the words, "He owes me. You all do." I stared at the envelope for a long time before I opened it. It wasn't the words that bothered me, it was the tone. That jagged, angry scrawl across the birth certificate, like she was underlining her own twisted narrative. "He owes me. You all do." As if giving birth was some kind of transaction, like Caleb had been a loan she made to us, and now she wanted interest. I knew this wasn't about money. Not really. It was about control. And she'd finally realized that the only way back into Caleb's life was to make him feel guilty enough to open the door. I waited until Sunday dinner to tell him. I hated ruining those nights. They were sacred to us, a quiet ritual of laughter, casseroles, and arguments over who made the better apple pie. But when I handed him the envelope, Caleb didn't flinch. He took it like he'd been expecting it all along. Rachel read it too, and her reaction was sharper. "This is blackmail," she said. Caleb just sighed. It's desperation, but I'm not giving in to it. George, who'd been mostly silent, cleared his throat. "Son, I know you think you've moved on, but sometimes ignoring someone like Lana only makes her escalate." "I'm not ignoring her," Caleb said. "I'm refusing to play a game where I never agreed to the rules." He stood up. "I'm going to handle this, but not with words. I want her to see what she walked away from." The next morning, Caleb drove to the shelter. I offered to go with him, but he said no. "This is mine to finish." He brought 2 things with him, a photo album and a signed legal document. I didn't know what was in the envelope, but I recognized the firm's name, our family lawyer. He came back 2 hours later. "She said I ruined her life," he told me, his voice calm, "that I was the reason she could never have a fresh start, that taking care of a baby wrecked her youth, even if she left me after 3 days. Rachel reached for his hand, but he kept talking. "I showed her pictures of me in kindergarten, my graduation, the dog we had when I was 12. I asked her which part of it looked like I owed her." Then he handed me a copy of the document. It was a cease and desist order. "She has 1 shot left," Caleb said. "One more message, one more stunt, and we file for a restraining order." But of course, Lana didn't take that well. 3 days later, she was outside Caleb's shop. Not yelling, not causing a scene. No, this time she was smarter. She sat in her car for hours, waiting. When Rachel walked out to grab lunch, Lana followed. She didn't scream, she didn't threaten. She pleaded. "I just want to be part of his life," she told Rachel. "I'm his mother." Rachel, bless her soul, didn't get angry. She looked Lana in the eyes and said, "You're the woman who gave birth to him, but you didn't mother him. We did." Lana blinked, stunned. "You? You're not even—" "I'm not replacing you," Rachel interrupted, "but I will protect him from you if I have to." That night, Rachel told Caleb everything. He didn't say a word. He just walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stood there, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched. I knew that look. It was the look of a man trying not to crack open. "She thinks she can wear us down," he finally said. "Like if she knocks long enough, we'll forget how many times she walked away." He turned to Rachel. "I need you to help me finish this, once and for all." What came next was bold, unexpected, maybe even risky. Caleb invited Lana to dinner. At our house. He didn't tell her it was an ambush, not in the hostile sense, but in the emotional one. George called it a reckoning. She arrived wearing pearls and perfume that reeked of borrowed confidence. She brought wine, she smiled too big, she hugged Caleb, uninvited, and he let her, stiff as stone. The table was set for 6. Me, George, Rachel, Caleb, and 2 empty chairs. "Who else is coming?" she asked, scanning the room. Caleb gestured to the chairs. "No one. They're just symbolic." She frowned. "One's for the boy you left behind," he said. "The other's for the woman you could have been." The air dropped 20 degrees. Lana scoffed. "Oh, come on. Are we doing this again? The guilt trip, the moral parade?" "No," Caleb said. "We're doing clarity." He reached into his pocket and placed something on the table. It was the same bottle cap necklace he'd made in 1st grade, the one he gave me for Mother's Day when he was 6. Bent metal, yarn string, crooked letters that spelled Best Mom. Lana stared at it, confused. "That was the first time I stopped waiting for you," Caleb said. "And the first time I realized Mom wasn't the woman who gave birth to me. She was the one who stayed." He looked at me. I didn't move. I couldn't. Lana stood up. She wasn't crying. She was angry. "You're all insane," she hissed. "You think this makes you righteous? You think this dinner fixes anything?" "No," Caleb replied, still calm, "but it ends it." She looked around like she might knock something over, but she didn't. She just walked out the door. No slamming, no theatrics, just silence. And for the first time in over 20 years, it felt like peace had finally entered our home. It would have been a perfect ending if silence had stayed. But silence, when it comes to people like Lana, is never peace. It's just the inhale before the next scream. For a couple of weeks, we let ourselves believe it was over. Caleb went back to work, Rachel started sketching plans for their wedding, George finally relaxed enough to take afternoon naps again, something he hadn't done in years. Me? I started cleaning out the attic. It's what I do when I don't know what to do. Organize things, rearrange what I can control. Somewhere between an old suitcase and George's fishing gear, I found the baby blanket Caleb came home in. Faded blue with little stars stitched along the corner. I sat down on a box of Christmas decorations and held it to my chest like it could still make him feel safe. And I cried. I cried because I'd hoped Lana would change. I cried because she hadn't. And I cried because I'd spent 25 years trying to build a home out of a wound. Then the package came. No return address, just Caleb's name and our street number written in sharp, aggressive pen strokes. He opened it on our porch while I watched from the window. Inside was a handwritten journal, Lana's journal. She'd sent us her truth, her words, page after page of ramblings, blame, revisionist history, and thinly veiled threats. She wrote about how we stole her motherhood, how Caleb owed her acknowledgement, how Rachel was manipulating him for his money, and how, if things didn't change, she'd make sure the world knew the kind of son he really was. She even included a photo, a childhood picture of Caleb scribbled over in red pen with the words, "I made you." Rachel was the one who found the tracker. It was taped under her car bumper, a small GPS device, barely noticeable. She'd only spotted it by chance while parking near a construction site. She brought it into the house with shaking hands. "I knew it," Caleb said quietly. "I knew she wasn't done." That night, we went to the police. At first, the officer seemed unsure. No restraining order, no direct threat. But when Caleb handed over the journal, the package, and the tracker, something shifted. They took it seriously. Within days, a detective visited Lana's last known address. She wasn't there, But a neighbor reported she'd been acting strange, lurking near local schools, asking questions about nearby businesses. When they found her 2 days later, she was at a public library, using the computer to access Caleb's company website. She'd written a fake review, claiming he defrauded her, cost her home, and abandoned her in a time of need. It had already gotten a few clicks. But the moment the police knocked on the library window, Lana froze, like someone caught trespassing in their own fantasy. They arrested her on charges of stalking, harassment, and unauthorized tracking. She didn't resist. The hearing was quiet. Lana refused to look at any of us in the courtroom. She sat with her arms crossed, lips tight, as the prosecution read aloud her journal entries and online posts. Caleb, standing tall in a navy blue suit, spoke only once. "I don't hate her," he said, "but I won't let her poison the life I've built. I spent too long trying to earn love from someone who didn't know how to give it. I'm done paying for her choices." When the judge issued a 2-year restraining order and sentenced her to 6 months in county jail, Lana didn't flinch. But I did. Because even after everything, after the threats, the years of absence, the lies, I still remembered holding her as a baby. Still remembered when she used to call me Mom in the dark when she had nightmares. Grief is funny like that. It doesn't care about logic. The wedding happened 3 months later. A soft spring day with light wind and blooming lavender. Rachel wore a dress that caught the sun like silk water. Caleb looked calm, not ecstatic, not overwhelmed, just grounded, like a man who'd been forged, not born. He didn't invite Lana, not because of the order, but because he didn't want a chair left empty out of obligation. Instead, he danced with me for the mother-son dance. The song was simple, no lyrics, just piano and violin. But halfway through, he leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for choosing me." I couldn't respond. I was too full of everything. Later that night, Caleb pulled out something from his coat pocket and handed it to me. It was the old photo of him Lana had scribbled over, only now it was restored, cleaned, framed. Across the top, he'd written, "You didn't make me. You rescued me." And on the bottom, Mom. The last time I heard about Lana, she was living in a small town downstate. According to a friend, she'd dyed her hair red, changed her last name, and told neighbors her son had been taken away from her by greedy relatives. I didn't respond. Neither did Caleb. Some stories don't need corrections. They just need to end. 2 years later, Rachel gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. They named the boy Elias after George's father, and the girl? They named her Hope. And when I first held her in my arms, swaddled in soft green cotton, something inside me settled, like a story that had finally turned its last page. I looked at Caleb. His eyes were damp but bright. "She'll grow up never knowing what it's like to be unwanted," he said. "That ends here." And I believed him. Because sometimes family isn't who gave you life, it's who never let you feel alone in it.
And now I'd love to hear from you. What did you take away from this story? Was there a moment that struck a chord? A decision you agreed with? Or maybe didn't? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might just be the one that helps someone else feel seen. And if this story stayed with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next one. There are more stories coming of love, loss, and the quiet strength it takes to rise again. Thanks for listening all the way through. Your time, as always, means everything.